Senator is Associate Professor of Chest Medicine at King Edward Medical University. We are very proud to have
and from other point of view. Next. First symptom, which is very important, is the shortness of breath or dyspnea. This is a very common symptom. Although the symptom, the patient is in a very difficult situation, although the symptom is painless. Dyspnea or shortness of breath is the sensation of difficult or labored breathing. Normally you are not conscious of your respiration, it is going on. But when you become conscious of your respiration in one way or the other way, you will get a sensation that the process of respiration becomes very difficult, and patients use different terms for this. And it is very difficult to analyze whether he is saying about the tightness or he is talking about angina, he is talking about shortness of breath. So he can use many terms like breathlessness, choking, heavy breathing, suffocation. Some patients they are tired, and some they complain of chest tightness. So a long list of symptoms are there because patient is not conscious of medical terms, so he will not say that he has got dyspnea or this. But some patients say that they have got short of breath, but they will use different terms कि सांस रुक गया है, सांस नहीं आता, सांस भारी है, या थकावट महसूस होती है, या chest tight हो गई है. So you have to analyze whether he is talking about dyspnea or he is talking about some other symptoms, and you have to analyze it. Next. Diagnosis of the cause of dyspnea is important. Important feature of this important symptoms include when you have reached to the conclusion that the patient is talking about dyspnea, when he is talking about that he is conscious of his breathing and he is in difficult situations, you must analyze the severity, chronicity and timing, circumstances in which it occurs and associated symptoms. So you have to go further and analyze whether this is acute, subacute or chronic. What is the timing, which time of the day dyspnea has occurred, circumstances in which it occurs, and the associated symptoms there are no associated symptoms. So these are things which will analyze whether the dyspnea is due to cardiovascular, due to respiratory, due to some other problems. Because the long range of list of differential diagnosis of dyspnea, which can start with simple pallor or decrease in hemoglobin or anemia, to very, very severe conditions like left ventricular failure, where the patient can die in few minutes. So you have to analyze these symptoms. Next. There are specific type of dyspnea, and these terms are important from academic point of view and also from the analysis of the symptoms. The first is PND. Everybody must be familiar with this, and this is paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, that the patient was all right or was suffering from some disease, but he was not listening. When the patient lies down and in the middle of the sleep, the patient will wake up and then he will open the windows or the doors of his house and he will become listening, and he will assume a position in which he will be making himself or herself more comfortable. This is called PND. Paroxysmal attacks, nocturnal mean at night, and dyspnea. A dyspnea which occurring at the night in attacks when the patients go to sleep, and then if sleep is interrupted, then definitely the patient is suffering from PND. PND is a very important symptom of cardiac disease, that is left ventricular failure, but it can occur in asthma, it can occur in patients of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So this symptom must be analyzed. So when patients comes to you, usually we ask two questions. For example, we ask patients that if सांस की वजह से उसकी नींद इंटरप्ट होती है नहीं होती, अगर सांस की वजह से उसकी नींद इंटरप्ट होती है और खांसी साथ आती है, there are two important diseases. One is cardiac problems, that is left ventricular failure, and second is bronchial asthma. Early morning cough, early morning dyspnea is suggestive of PND. Second is orthopnea. Orthopnea is a symptom in which when the patient is sitting, he is all right, but when the patient is fat, then after some time he gets dyspneic. This is called orthopnea. And to combat orthopnea, the patient takes more pillows so that his positions becomes in a better positions and orthopnea is relieved. This is also a symptom of cardiac disease. The thing is that the patients of congestive cardiac failure, they get peripheral edema. When the patient lies down, this edema is absorbed and the intravascular fluid is increased in the amount. It goes into the circulations, then in the lungs, and the patients get dyspneic in this position. But this term is not truly patients can perceive these terms. These certain patients who are very obese, certain patients who are suffering from diaphragmatic problems, certain patients who are suffering from diseases of the chest, when they resume this position, definitely they can become dyspneic. So this is not diagnostic of the symptoms. Then it is not diagnostic of cardiovascular problem. But if the patient says that he cannot lie down flatly, then there are possibilities that these symptoms should be furtherly inquired or investigated. The third type of dyspnea is called platypnea. This is a special type of dyspnea which occurs when the patient stands up. So previously, two types of dyspneas was very popular. P&D was usually asked in the final year examinations, what is P&D, what is orthopnea. But platypnea is usually associated with orthodoxia. That is, when the patient is sitting, he is all right. When the patient stands up, he becomes dyspneic. The most common causes of platypneas, there are two. One is called cirrhosis of liver, and second is AV malformation. What happens that in cirrhosis of liver, there are shunts in the lung, which is called arteriovenous shunts at the base of the lung, or there are congenital AV malformation in the lung, with the result when the patient stands up, or patients after some time he will get dyspneic because of decrease in oxygen. This is called orthodoxia. So platypnea usually associated with liver disease, or it is usually with AV malformation. The third is hyperventilation. This is very important symptoms, and I think most of you have seen these patients in your clinics, where especially the young ladies, they come when they hyperventilate, and means there's an increased respiratory rate. So different types of dyspnea has been described according to the positions, whether the patient dyspnea is more at night, dyspnea is more in lying flat, dyspnea is more in standing up, or patient is dyspneic at rest and hyperventilated. There is increase in respiratory rate. Next. Respiratory sensation described by patients with different chest diseases. So this analysis that how the patient's presence and how we can analyze at your clinics. This is not a 100% diagnostic, but with the sensation of dyspnea, if you analyze it, definitely one can tell whether this is respiratory, this is cardiac, this is something else. For example, rapid breathing. Rapid breathing, when the patient comes and he is febrile and his respiratory rate is increased, this shows that there is some metabolic problem, there is some infection. Because of increased fever, the respiratory rate is increased. So this is rapid breathing. It may be due to hyperventilation, it may be due to anxiety, it may be due to diabetic ketoacidosis, it may be due to renal failure. So rapid breathing covers a lot of things, from metabolic to different diseases. Shallow breathing is very important, and shallow breathing usually occurs in two important diseases. One is in cardiac disease. If any patient who is dyspneic and has shallow breathing, this type of breathing can occur in pneumonias, means alveoli are filled with fluid, or in pulmonary edema. So this has to be differentiated with incomplete exhalation or feeling of suffocation or heavy breathing. In case of respiratory problem, the patient when come, then he takes deep breath. He will come like this. But the cardiac patient will usually come, the respiratory rate will be increased. In case of the asthma patient will come like this. Patient of COPD will come like this. But the cardiac patient will come like Our pneumonic patients will come like this, but the patients who are suffering from respiratory problems like pneumonias, COPDs, like asthma with the obstruction, then the patient will take like this. But in patients of cardiac pulmonary edema like this, they will come with very shallow breathing, with marked perspirations. Incomplete exhalation is a feature of asthma and COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Patient is unable to breathe out. Increased effort is a symptom of diseases of the chest. For example, there is a paralysis of the muscles of the chest, or there is some neurological problem, then increased effort will occur. That patient will take very deep breath, and you will find that there is increased effort. Patient will move forward and like this. Feeling of suffocation or heavy breathing, patients of asthma, patient of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Chest tightness, patient of bronchial asthma. Then a special type of symptoms, the patients come, air does not go deeply enough. This is usually young patients, they come to the chest clinics or into the doctor's and they will come, they say that they are unable to take deep breath. It does not mean that they have shallow breathing. Their air does not go deep enough. If you analyze the symptom, they will say that they are dyspneic, आधा सांस अंदर और आधा सांस बाहर. Air does not go into the lung. This is a sign of, usually a sign of anxiety or hysterical patients. They usually comes with the symptoms. Or they were hyperventilating. Either they say that air will not go into the lung, but you ask them to exercise, then the relief occurs. But if this is due to pathogenic process or some other process, there is no history of asthma, there is no history of COPD, this patient is not febrile, patient is absolutely fit, but history of insomnia, history of fatigue or some other family problem is there, and they will say that they are unable to take air deep enough. The हवा जो है वो is not going into the chest. This is symptoms of anxiety neurosis. So you have to analyze this. Next. Because when the patients comes to you, definitely if the investigations are not available, so it becomes very difficult whether it is cardiac, whether it is respiratory, patient is hyperventilation, it is anxiety neurosis, it is metabolic. So it is important that when patient of dyspnea comes, acute dyspnea we're talking, you ask two questions, the previous diseases, whether the patient is suffering from asthma, patient is suffering from COPD, patient is suffering from some metabolic disorders, patient is suffering is febrile, or patient is not suffering from any disease. And second is the pattern, it is rapid breathing, or it is unable to take air into the lung, or the patient complains that he is heavy breathing or deep breathing. And you can guess that the patient is suffering from cardiac problem, respiratory problem, or this. But a cardiac patient may suffer from bronchial asthma, a patient of bronchial asthma may have myocardial infarctions. So best thing is that if X-ray facilities are there, you can go for an chest, see the cardiac size, and then you can decide. Then the chronicity and timing, acute. Acute means acute viral or bacterial pneumonia, asthma, pulmonary embolism, pneumothorax, pulmonary edema, aspiration, or mucus plugging of airways. So these are very important acute causes of patient was all right and he comes to your surgery or in clinics and he says that he has got dyspnea. Ask, take the history, patient is suffering from bronchial asthma, acute attack of asthma is there. Patient was suffering, taking oral contraceptive, or patient is obese or some predisposing factors, and patient is dyspneic and acutely dyspneic, unexplained dyspnea, think about pulmonary embolism. Patient get acute attack of chest pain and patients can dyspneic pneumothorax. Pulmonary edema, cardiac problem, acute shallow breathing, pulmonary edema. Patient was absolutely all right, history of aspirations, or he was ill and some problem with the dysphagia. So, and then he aspirated or mucus plugging of airways. In certain diseases, patients can come because of mucus plugging, patients can come with acute dyspnea. So these are the causes, and the most common causes are usually to asthma and pulmonary edema, but other causes can. Next. Then the chronic are slowly progressive. If the patient says he has got dyspnea from weeks to months and to years, or even for decades, then chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is a disease where there is obstruction to airflow at the airways, and this obstruction is usually permanent. It is not responsive to the treatment, or if it is responsive to the treatment, only a small element of disease is responsive, and this is a progressive disease, usually occurs in smokers, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Second is where asthma reflect bronchodilators. Sometimes asthma does not relieved by bronchodilators, and it can become chronic. Interstitial lung disease these days is also a common, that is the basal part of the lungs, they get fibrosed, and patients can come with dyspnea. Then the pulmonary vascular disease, so they can come with chronic progressive disease. Then seasonal variation. If the dyspnea is according to the seasons, for example, the patient says that he gets dyspnea during the month of March, April, or November, October, when there is change in the weather, then think about their seasonal variations, that is, patients may be suffering from seasonal asthma, and bronchial asthma should be included. Then is the occupational. In certain occupations, patients get asthma when he goes to the work. At the end of the week, patient is all right, but next day he will go to the work, then definitely he will get dyspnea. So dyspnea should be analyzed from occupations to the seasons, and from acute to the chronic. Our patient has got history. So most important thing is taking the history. It is said that history is the most important part of the medical investigations, and said that it is after months and tons of investigations, if you are not able to diagnose the case of any disease, after months and tons of investigations, again go to the history. And 70% of diseases, 70% of a disease, or 70% can be diagnosed on history, proper history, if history is taken correctly, because history will determine which investigation you will do, history will determine which examination is essential. So history is the most important part, which usually our patient, they does not give a very good history, and if you ask them that have you investigation previously done, then he'll say that yes, I have gone this investigation, I have got this investigation. So very important that you must ask the patients about previous medications, previous treatment, previous visit to the doctors, previous visit to the hospitals, previous operations, whatever which is in the past, because that will give clue to the whether which type of the problem is there. For example, patient will come dyspnea and he will not tell you about anything. The doctor is in trouble, because he will not say, the relative will say that patient is there and you have got no investigations and the situation is very tense, patient is acutely dyspneic. So if you take the patient's relative in confidence and says which type of treatment he's taking, if he says he's taking inhalers, then definitely you have an idea that the patients may be suffering from bronchial asthma or COPD. If a patient is taking Lasix, diuretics, or others, definitely patients may be suffering from copper-monale, and your line of action will be determined. But sometimes it becomes very difficult, especially to differentiate between the hysterical patients and either they have got attack of bronchial asthma or either they are suffering from anxiety neurosis. So it becomes very difficult sometimes whether which problem is there. So I think if you do proper investigation in those patients which are difficult patients, you can reach to a diagnosis. So this was about dyspnea. Next is the cough. Cough is also very important. I think this is the most important symptoms which the respiratory physicians they face, and especially the doctors they also face, medical specialists, internists and family physicians. Cough, the patients usually come with cough, and in Western countries they have made cough centers, specialist cough centers, where they only treat the cough, because sometimes cough becomes such a problematic, such a big problem that you are unable to diagnose or unable to treat. So special centers has been there, which is called cough diagnostics, specialist cough centers, where the patients of chronic cough, we cannot get relieved by any medications or by anything, they can come and they can be analyzed what is the cause. Because the causes of cough, they are not confined to the respiratory systems, they are in cardiovascular systems and in others. And cough is not a very small symptoms. I was seeing the literature. Recently they have documented that with cough they have a case where the spleen has ruptured. With cough there is a splenic rupture has been described. With cough there is a fracture of ribs has been described. With cough there is a cough syncope. Patient has gone and has got syncope, has got unconsciousness with cough. All these things has been described in the literature. So cough receptors are located throughout the respiratory tract and in extrapulmonary sites, including the pleura, pericardium, auditory canal. This is also very important. Sometimes you get every patients give everything, but cough does not go. Then you ask the patient that some wax is there in the air and you should remove that wax, cough goes on. So wax in the air, auditory canal irritations is also one of the important cause of cough. A case has been reported also that there was some hair, foreign body in the form of hair gone into the external auditory meatus, has caused cough. Patient was fully investigated from CT scan, from bronchoscopy and other thing, but no cause was there. And when ear examination was seen, then only foreign body in the form of a hair was here. In the foreign body, in the external auditory meatus, in the form of hair was there, and it was diagnosed that the patient was, this was the cause of the cough. That was removed, cough was gone. So receptors are there everywhere. Paranasal sinuses, stomach and diaphragm. This is also very important. Patients come that got stomach and he has so-called got cough. And the association has been described in the form of reflux esophagitis. I'll be telling you on the next slide. So stomach, diaphragm, paranasal sinuses, external auditory meatus, pericardium, pleura, all things can produce this cough. Receptors are there. If there are irritations, cough will be there. And when cough is there, one will usually some other symptoms of that system is there. So you should analyze if the patient has got persistent cough, cause may be anywhere else than the lung. Next. Cause, acute. So you have to demark. First question you have to ask, the duration. Less than 3 weeks.
Regarding cough, GERD is most important cause of cough. I think this is due to the common loss supply of esophagus and respiratory tract, or there is some other cause.
What is the?
GERD is an important cause of cough.
G.
And what is the reason? Whether it is the common loss supply or
GERDs, the mechanism is they say that the patients of GERDs, when they lie down, they aspirate into the respiratory tract. Small amounts of this, they are aspirated. That can be possible cause. Second is the patients of GERDs, they may be obese, some other symptoms are there. With that, the phenomena of they may be prone to get sleep apnea or some other. But the most important thing that the receptors they get irritated and they get persistent cough. Diaphragm is irritated, the area near that, and then the cough can occur. But there are multiple mechanisms. So acute cough is less than 3 weeks. Duration is very important. If the cough is less than 3 weeks, it means this is acute cough. And this is the most common presentation of cough, viral or bacterial upper respiratory tract infections. It's very common. Commonly this is occurs, and usually patients comes to you that they has got cough and the cause is usually viral or bacterial upper respiratory tract infection. Whether you treat or you do not treat, patients will be all right. If you give treatment of viral upper respiratory tract infections, then the patient will be all right in 7 days. If you do not give any treatment, patient will be all right in 1 week. So it does not mean anything. But you give treatment because bacterial infections may be impending, and if you do not give and resistance is low, definitely this process can be prolonged. Then is pneumonia, aspiration, cardiogenic pulmonary edema and pulmonary embolism. So this is the cough is less than 3 weeks. This is acute. Patient is usually febrile, upper respiratory tract infections, cough, cough, cough. Cough is just like itching. You scratch, itch is there. Then you scratch, then it. Cough is like you cough, then you cough, and then the process goes on. Unless patient vomits, just like in whooping cough, then the cough stops. Or in case of asthma, you become dyspneic and get an acute attack. Next. Second is chronic cough. This is more than 8 weeks. So demarcation is 3 weeks and 8 weeks, and in between it is called subacute cough. So chronic cough is more than 8 weeks, and these are the causes. Usually the patients comes with certain patients that they have cough with more than 8 weeks. Chronic bronchitis, very common. Anybody who's got cough with expectorations for more than 2 years, for more than 3 months in 2 consecutive years, in the absence of tuberculosis and bronchiectasis, suffering from chronic bronchitis. Our patient is suffering from, he is a smoker, and smoker cough can occur and can prolong. Post-nasal drip. Important cause these days because of pollution, allergic rhinitis, asthma, gastroesophageal reflux, drugs. This is also important. Patients who has got on beta blockers, patient of hypertension who are on ACE inhibitors are one, they can get cough. And this is very interesting that the cough has been fully, you investigate and then ask the patients, you're suffering from hypertension, you're taking Capotin. He says, yes, I'm taking. So that may be the cause of this. Bronchogenic carcinoma, yes. Pneumoconiosis, interstitial lung disease, bronchiectasis, chronic infections, non-pulmonary disorders, and this is a variety which has been added, chronic idiopathic cough, that irrespective of investigating all the causes, you are unable to determine a cause for that. And what is the cause of the chronic idiopathic cough? It may be viral infections. Last year, for example, in winters, we received a lot of cases of persistent cough. And I think you have also seen, we are unable to diagnose what was the possible cause. What was the cause? And the most important cause was investigated and found that these patients suffered from viral infections. And after viral infections, their lungs or their airways become hyperactive. Their airways become hyperactive and cough prolonged from more than 8 weeks. And you ask the patient, are you asthmatic? He will say, no, I am not asthmatic. The patient is suffering from COPD, you are not suffering from COPD. He has got some flu attacks, upper respiratory tract infection, yes. When? About 4 months back. Our patients, when comes and to go to Saudi Arabia and then from Hajj, they usually get cough, and this cough is much prolonged. And the cough is because they get repeated respiratory tract infections there because of congestions and other problems. So in those patients, if you investigate these patients, you will find that the cause was, this variety is also called chronic idiopathic cough, but found to be, this is usually post-viral cough, and the treatment is you give inhaled steroids for some period. Definitely patient will improve. Patient will not improve with any cough syrup. And the patient is in agony, and he has somebody has diagnosed asthma, somebody has diagnosed something, but the cause is usually, every investigation is normal, the cause is usually post-viral. Next, chronic cough. If any patient who has got cough more than 8 weeks, asthma, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERDS, post-nasal drip syndrome, and post-viral cough, these are the 4 important diseases which should be kept in mind when the cough is prolonged. Cough is such a symptom that the patients usually either will ignore it completely or will be coming with that he has got fatigued and अजीबो-गरीब symptom होंगे उसके, he has got chest pain. One can think about it may be cardiac disease, but because of coughing, urinary problem, dribbling of urine, or some other problems are there, and this can distract you. Next. Sputum productions, when cough is there, you must ask whether it is accompanied by sputum productions or it is not. Normally about say 100 ml of mucoid sputum and mucus is produced, which is engulfed by the individuals into the esophagus and the stomach. But if the amount is increased more than that, then sputum production, it is a tracheobronchial secretions, will be clear or mucoid, it is purulent, it is putrid with 3 layers, it is rusty or blood stained, miscellaneous fun plugs of sputum. So if you further ask them, it is clear or mucoid, maybe due to allergic cough, maybe due to upper respiratory tract infections, post-viral, anything. If it is purulent, usually due to infections. If it is putrid, it means there is a lung abscess, there is a bronchiectasis. With 3 layers means that first is watery layer, then second is more concentrated layer, and third layer will be more concentrated. So if you keep the sputum, then you can find this. This is usually occur in bronchiectasis. Rusty or blood stain usually occurs in tuberculosis. In case of bronchiectasis or others, miscellaneous firm plugs of sputum usually occurs in aspergillosis. Next. So when cough occurs, then you have to decide whether it's acute or chronic, and if it is chronic, then you have to investigate further. If it is acute, if it settles in 3 weeks, then it's all right. If it does not settle, must go with an X-ray chest to investigate, because the most important causes of more than 3 weeks coughs are pulmonary tuberculosis, and after 6 weeks, you must investigate the patients for asthma or COPD or some other problems, or his patient is taking drugs. Drugs is usually antihypertensive drugs in the form of captopril or others is taken, and patients may get cough. The coughs usually subsides when you stop these medications. But it is said that certain drugs like indomethacin, they may be effective. For example, if you give indomethacin in patients who has got cough, who has got drug-induced cough because of captopril, the literature mentions that one can get relief. Hemoptysis. Hemoptysis is aspiration of blood from the lower respiratory tract. Mechanism is, they said that indomethacin, although its Indocet is it is anti-inflammatory, and bradykinin and other occurs when you give capotins, and there is a captopril and others. So when bradykinin, other inflammatory things, they are produced there, with endomethacin has got anti-inflammatory qualities. And what is produced? Then these bradykinins and others, they can block these things and patients can be relieved. Indomethacin also effective in even PDA, patent ductus arteriosus. They say if you give indomethacin in early stages of PDAs, then it is also due to its anti-inflammatory actions. This is specific to indomethacin, not to the other drugs. So although it's not used, but it's mentioned in the literature. Hemoptysis. Hemoptysis is aspirations of blood from the lower respiratory tract. There are 2 tracts, upper respiratory and the lower. Upper respiratory tract from the upper vocal cord, from vocal cord to this, somebody says trachea, but it is vocal cord above and vocal cord below is the lower respiratory tract. So it is, patient is bleeding from the lower respiratory tract. This is called hemoptysis. This is true or pseudohemoptysis. Anybody is bleeding from above is called pseudohemoptysis, mean anybody, for example, is come with epistaxis, engulfs blood and then spit out blood. This is pseudohemoptysis. Anybody is bleeding from gums, this is pseudohemoptysis. This is spitting of blood. But in our setup, what happens that the patient has got some epistaxis, and after some time will engulf the blood, will go down, and then will expurgate the blood, and one can say that he has got hemoptysis, but the hemoptysis is the pseudohemoptysis. Bleeding is not from the lower respiratory tract, bleeding is from the upper respiratory tract. Severity, scant hemoptysis means small hemoptysis. Frank or gross hemoptysis means blood is there, naked eye, and you can say amount is more. But if their blood is 200 ml of blood in 24-hour period, it is called massive hemoptysis. But fortunately, the cause of massive hemoptysis is urinary tuberculosis or bronchiectasis. But the cause of this scanty hemoptysis is very dangerous. If it is true scanty hemoptysis, and if the patient is smoker and he says that he has got expectoration of blood and there is streaking of blood in the sputum for some time, always investigate the patients for bronchogenic carcinoma. But this type of hemoptysis, which is gross, usually due to tuberculosis or due to bronchiectasis. Next, amount and duration of bleeding, patient's age and smoking history, radiographic finding, accompanying symptoms, all will decide what is the possible cause for hemoptysis. Because duration and amount, it is said that patient if spits blood once, then it is not hemoptysis. It may be true hemoptysis, but true hemoptysis means that patient will spit blood, then again spit blood, small amount, then small amount, then small amount, and will stop in hours. If it is true hemoptysis, if it is bleeding from the lower respiratory tract, the hemoptysis episode will be 4, 5, 6. If only one episode is there, so either the patient has spitting of blood or is bleeding from the upper respiratory tract. And you have seen patients will come that they spit blood in the morning when cleaning the mouth and front. So this is not so. But if they repeat it on the same day after 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, these patients should be investigated that they have got hemoptysis. Then the patient's age, old age, definitely, and smoking history, radiographic finding, and accompanying symptoms will decide what is the cause for hemoptysis. This is very drastic, important symptoms, and if patients will come with hemoptysis, usually they will go to the doctors and will say that this is a very life-threatening. They will be in a very life-threatening situations. Next. So the cause of hemoptysis are many, and they are from respiratory tract to the cardiovascular. From the cardiovascular point of view, the important cause is mitral stenosis. If the patients of cardiac disease is having hemoptysis for prolonged period, he may be suffering from silent mitral stenosis and should go echocardiography. If the patient is dyspneic, he may be suffering from pulmonary edema and he is spitting blood. So there are a long list of causes of hemoptysis. It may be due to anticoagulant therapy, it may be due to some other problem which is away from the respiratory tract. So common causes are usually in the respiratory tract, but rare causes can occur anywhere. And one important differential diagnosis is whether the bleeding is from the GI or the bleeding is from the respiratory tract. And I think the color of the color, it is mixed with food or not, or if you can apply litmus paper on the blood and say whether the reaction is alkaline or reaction is acid to differentiate whether this is hematemesis or this is hemoptysis. Next is wheezing. Wheezing are the high-pitched musical sounds that occur during either phase of respiratory cycles. Wheezing means chati chikna jise kehte hain. Patient will come that they has got voice in the chest. And this is a very important symptoms. They are softer in quality and more likely to be heard during exhalations. The causes are asthma, which is wheezing is not diagnostic of asthma. Patient has got wheezing, it does not mean he has got asthma. It may be absent in early stages, bronchiolitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and LVF. So in all these patients, because of endothelial edema, swelling, patients of cardiac problems, they may have got wheezing, and one can misdiagnose that they are suffering from asthma. So there's a long list of wheezing, and we have to differentiate these 4 important causes. And wheezing means if you auscultate with the stethoscope, you will listen ronchi. A ronchi is an interrupted sound or musical sound which is heard with the help of stethoscope, and it may be high-pitched ronchi or the low-pitched ronchi, but the wheezing is usually a high-pitched sound which is heard without the help of stethoscope. Next. Then the stridor. Stridor is also a term which is used. It is a harsh, loud sound of constant pitch. Here the pitch is constant, occurs in disorder of larynx or trachea. In inspiratory stridor is usually laryngeal in origin. Can be differentiated from wheeze by timing and locations. Sometimes it becomes very difficult whether it is wheeze or it is stridor. You have to see 2 things. It occurs in inspiration or it occurs in expiration. Number 2, it is prominent at the neck or it is prominent at the thorax. If it is prominent at the thorax, voice is coming from here, this will be most likely ronchi. If the voice is coming from here, from trachea, this is most likely due to stridor. Stridor is usually due to upper view obstruction. Some foreign body, thyroid tumors, which is infiltrating the trachea, any foreign body or any external mass which is compressing the trachea or upper ways, you can be responsible for stridor. So stridor is different than the wheeze. Wheeze is in the intrathoracic airways or in the lungs, and the stridor is in the upper airways or usually in the trachea or in the larynx. And one has to differentiate between this because of 2 things. that is in the which part of the respiratory phase it is occurred, and second, and it is prominent on which side. So these are the 4 and 5 symptoms which has been described. The most important was dyspnea, hemoptysis, then the cough, stridor, so and wheeze. So these are the 4-5 respiratory symptoms which can be analyzed to reach a proper diagnosis. Thank you very much.
Rahim. With a very interesting and common symptom in cardiology, palpitations. I wonder how many of you have experienced palpitations in the audience. Just remember, when you were going to present yourself for Viva examination, what was going on at that time? Palpitations. Again, remember when you're in a fit of rage, when you're excited, when you are having unexpected results or unexpected situations in life, all of us, we experience palpitations. So palpitations is something that all of us, at one stage or another, maybe on a daily basis, we experience, all of us. So what is meant by palpitation? Next, please. Palpitation basically is awareness of one's heartbeat. When you are aware of your own heartbeat, which is inconvenient and unexpected, when you're expecting it, you don't feel palpitations. Although you have the same kind of situation clinically, your heart is racing away, you're having tightness in the chest or something, you can feel inside your chest, but still you do not complain of palpitation because you're engrossed, you are busy in that particular situation in life.